The town of Dry Creek woke beneath a sun that burned the dust gold and painted long shadows across the rutted street, and though morning had only just settled over the wooden storefronts and weathered porches, there was already a gathering forming near the well at the center of town, voices sharp with gossip, faces turned toward the slender figure standing alone in the open where everyone could see her, Clara Hensley, the last daughter of a man who had once been respected for his ranch, his cattle, and his stubborn refusal to bow to anyone, but death had taken him sudden in the spring and with him had gone the land, the herd, the livelihood, leaving Clara with nothing but threadbare clothes, memories that clung like ghosts, and the unforgiving eyes of neighbors who measured a soul by the weight of what they could contribute, and in her they saw only absence. Only a girl who could not plow fields like a man nor offer coin like a banker nor cattle like a rancher. The girl who once might have been courted for her father's name but now carried only his debts, and so the whispers had grown into murmurs, the murmurs into pointed accusations, until at last Holt Beringer, a broad-shouldered man with slick hair and a voice that carried too far, stepped onto the circle and declared that Clara had no right to stand where she stood, that the house she still slept in belonged to the bank, that the earth she trod was no longer hers, and if she had a shred of decency she would leave before decent folk were forced to drive her out, and the crowd, always eager for blood when it cost them nothing, nodded and spat and muttered words like worthless, lazy, burden, their judgment heavy as stones, and Clara, though her hands trembled at her sides, lifted her chin because she would not cry before them. Not now when they thirsted for her tears, though inside she felt as though she had already been flayed, her heart raw with the cruelty of it, her throat aching with words she longed to shout. You think I am nothing, but I have worked, I have cared, I have stood by my father's side through drought and storm, and I am worth more than the dust under your boots. Yet her voice failed, smothered by the weight of so many eyes pressing down, and Holt's smile widened, sensing victory, his hand lifting as though to sweep her from sight like so much refuse, when the sound of boot heels striking earth cut through the tension, slow and deliberate, a rhythm that stilled the muttering and turned heads, and through the line of townsfolk stepped a man taller than most, his frame built by long days in the saddle, the brim of his hat shadowing eyes that saw more than they revealed, a man known to some, feared by others, but spoken of always with respect, Luke McAllister, a rancher from the far side of the valley, quiet, steady, not one to meddle in the affairs of others, and yet here he was, his steps carrying him across the open space until he stood beside Clara, and the sight of him there, so solid, so immovable, sent a ripple of unease through Holt and his followers, for Luke was not a man to be trifled with, his reputation forged in the wilderness, in hard bargains and harder fights, and for a long breathless moment he said nothing, only looked from Holt to the crowd and finally to Clara, his silence a weight heavier than all their insults, and then, in a voice that carried like the crack of a whip, he said she was no burden, no dead weight, and as Holt sputtered and someone from the back shouted that she was worthless, Luke took another step forward, his hand resting easy near his belt, not threatening yet reminding all who watched that he was not a man who bluffed. And with the steadiness that silenced even the boldest tongues he spoke the words that fell like thunder over the dust, "She is my wife," and the crowd gasped, disbelief breaking into angry murmurs, Holt stammering that it was a lie, that Luke McAllister had lost his senses, but Luke did not flinch, did not so much as blink, his gaze locked like iron, his voice unshaken as he declared again that Clara Hensley was his wife and that any man with a quarrel could settle it with him. And in that instant the current shifted, the jurors faltering, the whispers turning uneasy, for no one was eager to test Luke McAllister, not in broad daylight, not before so many witnesses, and Clara, frozen at his side, felt her heart hammer against her ribs, felt her knees weaken with shock and confusion, for she had not known he would come, had not asked for his defense, and yet here he was, standing before all of Dry Creek, naming her with a word that carried both protection and promise, a word she had thought never to hear again in kindness, a wife. And though her tongue could not form a single reply, though her mind reeled at the sudden turn of fate, something inside her cracked open, something she had thought buried with her father, a fragile, trembling hope that perhaps, Just perhaps, she was not as alone, not as unwanted, as the world had made her believe.